All paths converge on Cittàgazze. A question is answered and choices are made that have dire consequences. Hello, everybody. I'm Steve from VALHARTV, and today I'll be reviewing his Dark Materials Season 2, Episode 7, Season Finale. Unfortunately, I don't know how to pronounce that word in the title sequence, so I'm not going to try. But this episode I thought was really good. There were some spots where it did falter. We'll get to that in just a little bit. This is going to be as non-spoiler as possible. But we really kind of start out and we see Rita the Witch listening to some creatures talk about how Lord Asriel doesn't have a particular item, and if he doesn't get it, he won't be able to win. So we really get to see that, and then, which I thought was kind of interesting because instead of her just talking to Lord Asriel about it, she hears it from some creatures, and then they have like a meeting off screen. So I understand that they lost an episode, and you know, this episode is good, and it makes the best of losing an extra episode that they probably should have had. But yeah, so we end up also seeing Will and Pan. That's Lyra's demon. Have a really good exchange in this episode. It's actually really full of emotions, and I thought it was a really, really good exchange because how often does one person get to talk to another person's soul without that person being like awake, say? I mean, it was really interesting, but because of the emotions that were brought to it between the two, you can see the growth between Pan and Will. So they really have bonded, especially because of Lyra, and they talk about that. So I thought that was really good. And we get another scene with Mrs. Coulter. Now, Mrs. Coulter, she is played by Ruth Wilson. She's amazing as this character. I can't say it enough. She discovers where Lyra and Will were living in Cittàgazze at the time, and then she ends up meeting a witch, and they have an exchange, which I thought was kind of interesting because of the circumstances that happen, and it leads to other circumstances too that I don't really want to spoil. But we get Japari and Lee running from the Magisterium. Their balloon crashed, as you saw in the last episode, and they're running from the Magisterium. And they have some really good dialogue in this too as they're running, and there's a setup for that is absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. And Will and his father are reunited in this, and we get a really good dialogue with those two as well. You know, between Japari and Lee, there's really like an emotional exchange in this with them, so I thought that was really good. But then when we get to Will and his father, that's a really good emotional exchange too. So there's a lot of emotional moments in this episode that I thought really made it good. And we finally see Lord Asriel asking the angels for help. Now, this episode does end on a really good cliffhanger, I thought, at least. And there's also a scene after all the credits are done that ends up setting up next season. So I kind of thought that was weird that they didn't do it earlier, because you have to watch all the credits in order to see this final scene. So there's probably going to be quite a few people who miss it. But overall, I did think this was a good episode. Again, this does falter. You know, we didn't get to see Asriel and Rita's meeting. That was done off screen. And then we see him recruiting the angels, but we already knew that he had recruited the angels, at least I thought, from their interactions with Mary. So I thought they were already working together in the previous episodes, but then they show him. So this might have been like a flashback, maybe, if they had another episode. It's hard to tell because they had to make the most of this episode. So, you know, those were the two places I really kind of thought this really faltered. Because, yeah, just the episode, like the scenes were a little weird because Ruda comes back without Azrael and talks to Serafina. So that whole thing, and then, she takes off again. So I was, that was a little confusing at first, but then after I saw the whole episode, I kind of was like, oh, okay, I see why they did that, for that type of stuff. But overall, I thought it was good. The acting in this was actually really well done for this episode as well. Like, everybody gets kudos for the way they acted, but the real actors in this were Lee and Japari, which is Will's father. So those two were phenomenal in this episode. The emotions that they bring and the dialogue that they have with each other and then with Will is just very emotional. Like, again, there's a lot of emotions that are brought to this. So, like, you have pain and loss in this episode that you can actually feel coming from the actors, because they're in that mindset, and they're believable, in my opinion. Again, yeah, I would honestly, because they had to make up for the lost episode, I would give this at least an 8.5 out of 10. It was still a good episode, but it faltered a little bit. So, yep, that's what I'd give it, an 8.5. Yeah, easily out of 10. It was still a good episode, though. Good ending episode for the season. Good cliffhanger that they end on. If you guys like what I do, please hit the like button and subscribe, as I'll be doing more content each week. Take care for now, everybody.